Bream, and the Fox News at Night team is next.
Not that anyone is counting, Laura, but we're on it. Thanks so much. We begin with the Fox News alert. Tonight, the Beltway is buckling up, awaiting the Justice Department Inspector General report on the handling of Hillary Clinton's email, that investigation. The stage is set. We'll tell you what we know so far and what you can expect tomorrow. Plus, President Trump says he and Kim Jong-un understand each other. New details from an exclusive Air Force One interview with Bret Baier about what the leaders agreed to at the historic Singapore summit. And we just heard from Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who's now tasked with hammering out the details. His comments straight ahead. And the Trump administration takes another step in prioritizing religious liberty, as the Attorney General says he will not tolerate discrimination against people of faith. Hello and welcome to Fox News at Night. I'm Shannon Bream in Washington. Breaking tonight, there's a brand new letter from House Intel Committee Chair Devin Nunes and several other Republican members to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, demanding that the FBI and Justice Department give them full access to documents they've, quote, lawfully subpoenaed, saying anything short of providing the records is obstruction. The letter comes as a number of FBI and Justice Department officials are facing a day of reckoning tomorrow, as a report by the DOJ Inspector General into how the Hillary Clinton email investigation was handled is finally going to go public. Could be a bombshell. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is here tonight with a preview as we wait. Catherine.
Shannon, the investigation that began nearly 18 months ago examines allegations of misconduct by FBI and Justice Department officials over their handling of the Clinton email case. Based on Fox's reporting, there will be a series of closed-door briefings tomorrow to include President Trump, as well as congressional committees with direct oversight of the Justice Department and the FBI. Congressman Bob Goodlatte is the Republican chairman of the House Judiciary Committee.
Because I think it's going to shed light on how the Federal Bureau of Investigation mishandled this whole investigation with regard to former Secretary of State and presidential candidate Hillary Clinton. And then when you contrast that with the way they have handled the investigation of the so-called Trump-Russia collusion, I think people are going to be astonished that there was this kind of bias in the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
When it began in January 2017, Democrats supported the independent review because they blamed former FBI Director James Comey for derailing Hillary Clinton's campaign when he reopened the criminal case about 10 days before the election. Republicans felt Clinton should have been prosecuted for mishandling classified information, but they accused Comey of giving her a pass. The Justice Department's internal watchdog, Inspector General Michael E. Horowitz, cannot bring criminal charges. But he can make what's called a criminal referral, where a U.S. attorney reviews the evidence and considers whether a prosecution is justified. The report is said to be more than 500 pages in length and should be available to the public later tomorrow afternoon. Shannon?
All right, Catherine, we are waiting as you are. The enormous report could take aim at the folks at the very top of the Justice Department and FBI, so who should be nervous tonight? Let's talk about it with former United States Attorney, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General Harry Litman, and Constitutional Attorney Robert Barnes. Welcome to you both.
Good to be here.
Okay, already this is what we're being told as managing expectations. Ed Morrissey writes on hotair.com, don't expect to find sweeping condemnations of systemic corruption unless he, meaning the Inspector General, finds specific and convincing evidence of it. The report is more likely to cite specific actions and allow the readers to reach their own broader conclusions. Harry, what are you looking for tomorrow?
Yeah, so I think that's right. The IG is really a fact finder, a very thorough one. And not a policymaker, but I think there's going to be some really stern taking to task of former FBI Director Comey, especially for his public pronouncements about the Clinton probe. We already know that Andrew McCabe will come in for some criticism. Loretta Lynch, I think, will not emerge unscathed either. So there'll be a series of criticisms about the handling of the Clinton probe. What I don't see or don't look to, and this is in response to the comments by the Judiciary Chair, is anything that reflects really in any way on the bona fides of Mueller probe against or the probe in general that involves President Trump, for that, there needs to be some kind of connection that I don't think will be drawn in this report.
Yeah, it looks like tomorrow what we're just going to get is a look at how those senior officials at DOJ and FBI handled the Hillary Clinton email investigation, whether they deviated from policy, those kinds of things. Already tonight, just a reminder for folks, Inspector General Horowitz is the one who did refer criminal charges potentially against Andrew McCabe. It's
right.
because of an internal referral of his that we know about the page struck text that went public. So, Robert, my question for you tomorrow is, do you think that this Inspector General will recommend or refer for any charges against those big names like Comey, Lynch, or McCabe, which he's already done in a different situation?
I think he will make a criminal referral against McCabe. I think he may make a criminal referral against Mr. Comey, though I think he'll mostly focus. I do. I think that most of his criticism will be focused on a lack of leadership, will be focused on his dereliction of duty, his failure to follow DOJ protocols, his failure to follow FBI procedures, which will reveal a discrepancy in a double standard, which will go to what the Justice Committee congressman was saying, that the only explanation for this discrepancy in double standards between the Clinton investigation and the Trump investigation, where in one case there was a real crime that was covered up with the FBI and DOJ's help, and the other one there was no crime, where there was an attempt to create one that didn't exist, and everyone's been prosecuted to the max with SWAT raids and attorney-client privilege record raids and everything else, that the only reason to explain that is that discrepancy in the double standards is the weaponization and politicization of the Department of Justice, the FBI, and our national security intelligence apparatus by the Obama administration, of which Comey's handling of Clinton reflects. The key aspect is there's clear differences between what Comey says and McCabe says about who authorized certain leaks. And if the Horowitz concludes that it is Comey who lied, then it will be Comey who is also referred for criminal prosecution.
All right. Quickly, I want to ask you both the same question. Do you think there's any chance that the underlying investigation into Hillary Clinton's handling of servers and emails and classified information, that itself gets reopened? Harry, to you first.
No, I think very unlikely, and it's the whole galloping away into into Trobe land that seems off to me. There's this political kerfuffle about the probe itself, but it really doesn't shed any light on the Mueller probe. And I do not think there will be any reopening.
Right.
I should say, though, just quickly, Shannon, it's pretty low standard to make a criminal referral from an IG report.
All right.
It's just if there's any possibility.
Very quickly, Robert, any chance that underlying investigation reopens?
I think if we're going to inspire integrity in the Department of Justice, then that investigation does need to be reopened. But Comey did such a terrible job in terms of chain of custody of the server and the immunity that he handed out like candy, it'll be very difficult to meaningfully prosecute the case.
All right, we will see tomorrow night, gentlemen. Thank you for the preview, Harry and Robert. Great to see you both.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
All right, Fox News alert. A senior administration official confirms to Fox News the Pentagon is expected to cancel the next major joint military exercise between the U.S. and South Korea. It's been scheduled for August. The official says the Pentagon will likely make that formal announcement to the cancellation of that in a press release tomorrow. Well, Kristen Fisher is tracking everything tonight, breaking down what we're learning more broadly about the U.S.-North Korea new relationship in a new interview with the president. Good evening, Kristen.
That's right, Shannon. Well, President Trump, he'd already caught the U.S. and South Korean militaries off guard by announcing that he'd agreed to end those joint military exercises, war games, as he called them. But tonight, in an interview with our Brett Baer, he made clear that there would not be a second surprise, that he would not be drawing down the number of U.S. troops in South Korea.
I would love to get the military out as soon as we can because it costs a lot of money for us. We have 32,000 soldiers in South Korea. I'd like to get them home. I would like to, but it is not on the table right now.
What was on the table were those joint military exercises, which are now on hold.
We will be stopping the war games, which will save us a tremendous amount of money.
President Trump says not only are they expensive, they're also provocative. It's a loaded term that's been used for years by the North Koreans, and the U.S. has always rejected it. Now the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says the president's use of that term is just one reason why he believes Kim Jong-un is walking away the winner.
I guarantee you our military men and women were squirming when President Trump called our joint military exercises provocations. They're not a provocation, President Trump. Adopting the North Korean view on American military exercises, which President Trump did, is nothing short of a public relations coup for Chairman Kim.
But President Trump believes the entire world won. After landing at Joint Base Andrews, President Trump tweeted, "Everybody now feel much safer than the day I took office. There is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea," adding, "Sleep well tonight."
The president should be applauded for disrupting the status quo. Now, let's go get an agreement. And we should be under no delusion that this is going to be fast.
Especially since the 1.5-page statement signed in Singapore was so light on details. It spelled out no specific commitments from North Korea, aside from working toward the complete denuclearization of the Korean peninsula, a promise the regime has repeatedly made and broken since the 1990s. But President Trump is confident that this time is different.
Chairman Kim wants to resolve the problem because he knew that we weren't playing around, I wasn't playing around, he's not playing around.
And now comes the hard part, nailing down those details. The Secretary of State says their next meeting with the North Korean has not been set, but he expects that it could happen fairly quickly, Shannon.
All right, Kristen Fisher, thank you very much. Well, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is on his way to brief top officials in China about the Singapore summit. Says he's confident negotiations with North Korea will happen very quickly, as Kristen said. Senior Foreign Affairs correspondent Greg Palcott is live in Seoul tonight with an update there. It's morning for you. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning, Shannon. That's right. Secretary of State Pompeo is on a follow-up, a reassuring mission throughout the region following the summit in Singapore between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. He is here in Seoul right now. He met a short time ago with South Korean President Moon Jae-in, who has been so critical to this whole process. He also met with his counterparts both here in South Korea, and the Japanese foreign minister came over as well. And yes, a major talking point, that decision by President Trump to suspend U.S. and South Korean military exercises. That has got critics both around the world and here in this region wondering whether President Trump has made some kind of a major concession. Secretary of State Pompeo said again that suspension would only happen as long as North Korea was involved in substantive negotiations with the United States. Here's a bit more of what he had to say a short time ago.
The world should rest assured that the United States, the Republic of Korea, and Japan remain committed to achieving the complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization of North Korea. The U.S. alliances with these two countries are absolutely ironclad. Minister Kong, Minister Kono, and I have developed a close friendship, and together we will continue to closely coordinate with respect to North Korea as we move forward together.
Secretary Pompeo went on to say that Kim Jong-un, according to President Trump, understands the urgency of the need to denuclearize as quickly as possible and that there would be no removal of sanctions until that denuclearization happens. These talks are expected to resume with North Korea maybe as soon as next week. He has also said, Secretary of State Pompeo has said that they could see substantial disarmament, or it's expected within the next 2.5 years. And yes, Shannon, he goes on to Beijing this afternoon, Korea time, China time. He'll be meeting with officials there, including, he has said, Chinese President Xi. A lot of work ahead. Back to you.
There sure is. Greg, thank you very much, live in Seoul. Well, our next guest was reportedly a bit surprised by the president's bold step with regard to our joint military exercises with South Korea. How's he feeling tonight? Well, Republican Senator from South Dakota, Mike Rounds, sits on the Senate Armed Services Committee and joins us live. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, so you said that you were a little surprised that he went that far. Now, Secretary Pompeo has said, to be clear, it is only premised on the fact that good negotiations continue, good faith negotiations on both sides. Otherwise, the exercises are back on. Do you have clarity about it tonight?
More than what we had earlier. The earlier reports was that he was canceling them, but that's not what it really was. What he's doing is saying, look, we'll take a break. And for North Korea, this is a big deal. For us, we do this on a regular basis. It's our practice invasion of North Korea. And we do that with South Korea. And we participate with Japan as well. And so, yeah, for North Korea, this was something that they were looking at. But you got to remember, number one, these can be reinstated very quickly. It's just like when there were some problems in developing the summit to begin with, the president could step back and immediately say, the deal's off, we're not going to have the summit. And then once there was additional negotiation, we could put the deal back on and have it on the same date. The same thing can occur here. So let's first of all give the president the opportunity to succeed. Everything starts with a first step. This was a first step, but it was a very good first step. Let's allow the president some leeway. Let's give him the opportunity to try to negotiate something besides going to war.
Okay, so I want to play a little bit of what one of your colleagues across the aisle, the top Senate Democrat, Chuck Schumer, had to say about where we are now.
Our adversaries, Russia and China, have gained, while our allies like South Korea and Japan have lost footing and some degree of faith in America's reliability.
We know that Secretary Pompeo has already talked with counterparts in South Korea and Japan. He heads on to China now. Do you agree with Mr. Schumer's assessments?
I respectfully disagree with his assessment. Number one, China clearly had a role to play here. They participated. But South Korea wants this to happen. Japan does not want to be in the middle of an armed conflict right now. Look, they're closer to North Korea than we are. They recognize they have multiple types of weapons. Remember, North Korea has more than just nuclear weapons. They've got biological weapons, chemical weapons, and so forth. South Korea would feel the brunt of it. Japan is in the targets as well. They want to see this peaceful resolve. Now, they don't want to give in. They don't want to give them something that they wouldn't otherwise have. But allow this president the opportunity to take more than just one step. Allow him a chance to find a way to get out of a mess that's been created over the last couple of decades. That's what this president is trying to do. Look, we want to support him. I think America should be supporting the president in terms of let's find a way to peacefully get around this. America doesn't just go out and look for wars. We try our best to resolve them, but sometimes by having a very, very strong offense and a very strong defense, you can sometimes convince some of your adversaries that it's better to find a peaceful solution than to continue to poke us.
I want to ask you about something else that you've been involved with. It's been really under the radar, but this news about China hacking into information allegedly involving our submarine programs. I want to read you something that the Washington Post had to say about this. Their report on it says this: Chinese government hackers have compromised the computers of a Navy contractor, stealing massive amounts of highly sensitive data related to undersea warfare, including secret plans to develop a supersonic anti-ship missile for use on U.S. submarines by 2020. That's according to American officials. You now asked the Navy to explain what has happened. Are you getting a briefing? What's the next step?
We've asked for a briefing. I serve as the subcommittee chairman on cybersecurity for the Armed Services Committee. I've asked to find out what happened, why we haven't been advised earlier of what this breach looks like. This is not the first time something like this has happened. We had information on the F-35 breached. We've had, on a regular basis, we have people trying to get into our systems. And it's not just within the Pentagon, it's within our contractors, it's within our critical infrastructure. There are 5 different domains in which you can go to war: air, land, sea, space, and cyberspace. When it comes to cyberspace, we are being attacked every single day, thousands of times per day. Our systems can't simply withstand that type of an attack all the time without responding. What we're working at right now is not only strengthening our defenses, but as the DOD actually suggested a year ago last February, we have to have a very potent offense that we're not afraid to use to go after these folks who are constantly trying to get inside of our systems. And so, number one, we've got to find out what kind of damage was done. Second of all, we've got to find out how they got in and what we can do to respond accordingly, not just this time, but in the future as well.
A reminder that this is happening all the time. And whatever you can tell us, let us know what you find out.
Thank you.
Senator, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, new tonight. Calls for Democrats to, quote, play dirty this November, with a number of provocative proposals aimed at ensuring they get and keep power. Extreme stuff like, check it out, splitting California into 7 different states. Trace is on the story. He'll sort it out for us. Plus, Leslie Marshall and Larry O'Connor weigh in on the president's optimistic predictions about the midterms. And why is the House Intelligence Committee's top Democrat, Adam Schiff, planning to go after Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump? Details next.
Importantly, we would also be doing oversight again and making sure that the country is being run for the benefit of its citizens, not for the benefit of Donald Trump or Ivanka or Jared Kushner or anyone else in the family.
It is not fake news. A proposal to split California up into 3 different states has actually gotten enough signatures to get onto the November ballot. And there is a mountain of political strategy behind this whole idea. Trace Gallagher is on the case from our West Coast Bureau. Trace, you could have 3 states to choose from come fall.
Yeah, I mean, where would you live, right? You know, Shannon, the Cal 3 initiative would kind of work like a big, ugly divorce with 3 spouses. You would have Northern California, Southern California, and then the counties from Los Angeles up through Santa Barbara would make up New California. And then you would have to divide up all the assets and liabilities like the college and university systems, prisons, power grids, even water rights. For example, Southern California currently gets much of its water from Northern California, and you can bet that would spark a major legal battle. Of course, all of this is predicated on voter approval, and a recent poll by Survey USA says 72% of registered voters oppose the split, only 17% support it. And even if for some reason voters say yes, it then has to be signed off by the state legislature and the U.S. Congress. The measure was backed and funded by billionaire investor Tim Draper, the same man who spent millions trying to split California into 6 states back in 2012 and 2014. Draper says the state government has rotted. Watch.
In California, we can't do worse. We pay the highest taxes and we get the worst service. We have the worst education. We have the worst infrastructure.
Many critics agree that California does have big-time problems like taxes and housing costs, but they say dividing the state into 3 would lead to chaos and cost tens of billions of dollars. The group opposing the split, called One California, says, quoting, splitting California into 3 new states will triple the amount of special interests, lobbyists, politicians, and bureaucracy. There are, in fact, political ramifications. We would gain 4 new U.S. senators, but keep the same number of congressional seats. The new California and Northern California would likely stay Democratic. Southern California would likely become a swing state. David Ferris, who's a political scientist at Roosevelt University, argues that California should be split into 7 states. He says big states like California, which are largely Democratic, are simply too big to be fairly represented in the Senate. And by dividing up the state, you could get like a dozen more Democratic senators. Ferris, who is very anti-Trump, says Republicans have been fighting dirty for years, and it's time for Democrats to return the favor, starting with breaking up the Golden State, though we should note that since California became a state back in 1850, there have been 200 attempts at splitting up California. None.
Yeah, so far it's a hard pass. All right, Trace, thank you very much. We'll watch.
Sure.
All right, speaking of electoral politics, President Trump is not afraid, he says, of the alleged midterm blue wave.
I think the economy is so good. I think the tax cuts have been incredible, far greater than even I thought they'd be. The regulation cuts have been great. I mean, I've done more in 500 days than any president has ever done in their first 500 days. Now, history is against me because history, for whatever reason, you win the election and then you lose lots of seats. I think we're going to do very well. I really do. I think the economy is doing so well. We're doing so well as a nation. I think we're going to surprise people.
All right, joining us now to talk about it, Fox News contributor, syndicated radio talk show host Leslie Marshall, and Larry O'Connor, radio host of WMAL in Washington and associate opinion editor at The Washington Times. Welcome to you both.
Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon.
Okay, so the president feeling very optimistic. He knows history is against him because only once in recent decades has this actually worked for the sitting president, the first midterm after his election. I do want to talk you through some recent polls, though. These are brand new from Fox News last week. So let's start with this. Which party would do a better job? And it asks on a number of different topics. When it comes to the economy, the Republicans are +5 on that front. Will it translate for them, Leslie, come fall?
I don't think so, because what has to translate is what people are saying right now. With this legislation, show me, not the corporations, the money. Now, there are some corporations that are doing some great things, but that's not the majority of them. And this trickle-down economics hasn't worked in the past, and it's going to be what do the voters feel. It's not just that, Shannon, because it's not just about money. What we're seeing, and Democrats are very surprised that they're out there talking about health care. Health care is a big issue for both Democrats and Republicans coming into the midterm, and that's an area where they look at Republicans failing them, not only with increased costs, but with less coverage going forward. And where we're seeing in some states, in the state legislatures, that we're seeing some areas that Trump won in double digits, even 20 percentage points, we're seeing Democrats take some of those over. I don't think we're going to see a blue tsunami, but I do think we are going to see a blue wave.
All right, another poll that came out last week. How are you feeling about the U.S. economy? And this was asked across party lines. 59% say optimistic, 35% say pessimistic. That is a 24% lead for folks who thinks that this president's doing well with this. Larry?
Yeah, I think that the president is right in terms of there being some indications that this is not going to be the blue wave even that Leslie suggests. Here's the thing. In 2010, there were huge gains for the Republicans. I mean, they flipped, 60 seats, I think, or something in the House, took the majority, and made inroads into the Senate, lessened the majority the Democrats had, and then in 2014, they took over the majority of the Senate. I think this time around, Republicans are actually going to gain. The seats are in their favor. The seats that are up for grabs are in their favor. They'll gain seats in the Senate. They may lose seats in the House, but as of now, I don't think they're going to lose the majority. So he will actually overcome expectations, is what is usually done. He's overcome expectations. And it is all about the economy right now. Despite what Leslie says, it's not just about corporations. The overall economic feeling in this country is positive and will continue to be so.
Leslie, how unpleasant do you think things would be for President Trump if he loses the House?
Well, I think the way the president is, he'll tweet a different spin to the reality there, Shannon. So I don't think it will bother him. But I have to say, I have to agree with Larry a tiny bit. Don't faint yet again. I think this is twice this year. The reason being that we can't trust the polls. We saw that in 2016 with regard to the midterms. And this is a president who, quite frankly, has turned history around politically. Yeah. So I think that we could possibly, see that happen. Although, as a Democrat, obviously, I would like history to stand with the president losing seats for his party in both the House and the Senate.
A poll that may make Leslie happy, and not Larry so much, is the more generic look at our poll asked, who would you vote for Congress in your district? So we're asking voters where they are now. Democrats got 48%, Republicans got 39%. So, Larry, that's a +9 for Democrats on that so-called generic ballot.
It is, and it will be a real problem if the Democrats do get the majority in the House. In fact, in the last 6 weeks of the midterm campaign, I guarantee you the biggest talk on both sides of the aisle will be about impeachment.
The I word.
If they get the majority, this will be a bad final 2 years of this first term for this president, because it will all be about the impeachment hearings. That's all they've got. The Democrats' platform right now is get Trump, remove Trump, impeach Trump. It's the only message they've got. And their voters, if they do give them the majority in the House, they're going to expect impeachment hearings. And this country requires our government to actually get something done, not just focus on President Trump and so-called Russian collusion.
Well, they haven't been doing much, the American people think. I mean, they've got the worst rating in the country. I think they're behind dentists and terrorists.
No, I think the media is worse right now, Shannon.
I mean, Congress...
But that's not your fault.
Listen, we aim to please. We try to do our jobs here every day. But the truth is the polling is really terrible for Congress. And, people don't care which party's in charge. They generally hate it. Yeah. So we'll see how it all translates. Leslie and Larry, always great to have you both.
Thank you.
All right, a North Carolina town reportedly tells a church, you are not welcome here. A Maryland city tells another church, stop worship services or you've got to leave. Is religious freedom under fire, and is the Trump administration doing enough to stop it? Attorney General Jeff Sessions says he's laying down the law. Leland Vittert investigates next.
In recent years, the cultural climate has become less hospitable to people of faith and religious belief. Many Americans have felt that their freedom to practice their faith has been under attack.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions says he's taking the fight for religious liberty local and moving aggressively to protect places of worship from overzealous, perhaps discriminatory local authorities. Now, Leland's been digging into the story. What have you found out tonight, Leland?
Well, the evangelicals will tell you promise made, promise kept. They view this as a big step in keeping the president's campaign promise to fight back against discrimination. The Religious Land Use Act has been around for nearly 2 decades, but religious liberty activists say the Obama administration did a lousy job of enforcing it, a sentiment the Attorney General seems to agree with.
In recent years, the cultural climate has become less hospitable to people of faith and religious belief. Many Americans have felt that their freedom to practice their faith has been under attack.
The Justice Department rolled out a program called the Place of Worship Initiative, complete with pamphlets and its own website to encourage more claims of discrimination under the law. With the program came a fresh lawsuit by the Justice Department on behalf of a synagogue in New Jersey that claims the town is using zoning and other laws to keep it from building a new facility. Religious freedom groups viewed as a welcome change from the Obama administration.
filing 40-some cases during the Obama administration in a 6-year period is nothing compared to the kind of discrimination we're seeing on an everyday basis. We filed 2 lawsuits alone in just the last week under this law.
Sessions rolled out the program as part of a speech highlighting the administration's work on behalf of religious freedom, heralding the DOJ's recent win in support of Colorado baker who refused to provide a cake in a gay wedding, changing FEMA's policy to aid houses of worship, and helping a Montana couple who wanted their child to attend a religious school, as well as cracking down on hate crimes.
Well, President Trump said during the campaign that he would make religious freedom his top priority, and we've seen that on a number of occasions.
Now, today's announcement in this new program not only includes increased enforcement, but a push by the DOJ to educate religious leaders about their rights, Shannon, and then also trying to tell local government officials what they can and cannot do under the law.
Definitely feels like a change.
They certainly feel that way.
All right, Leland, thank you for digging into it. Good to see you.
Yeah.
All right, Ireland Prime Minister says Catholic hospitals must perform abortions. The announcement comes just weeks after the voters decided to repeal the country's 8th Amendment, which protected the rights of unborn. There is legislation in the works which would reportedly allow individual doctors and nurses to opt out based on religious convictions, but not institutions as a whole. Up next, we'll hear from a conservative who called herself a never-Trumper until the resistance came to town. So, what does she think now about Senator Bob Corker's warning for his fellow Republicans?
It's not a good place for any party to end up with a cult-like situation as it relates to a president that happens to be reportedly of the same party.
Shannon, Democrats are taking aim at newly released financial disclosure forms showing Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner made more than $80 million in outside income last year while working at the White House.
In this case, the First Family, which has an important policy role in the administration, has not divested, not fully.
Most of their income came from real estate earnings, but they also received more than $5 million from the trust overseeing Ivanka's clothing brand and $3.8 million from her stake in the Trump International Hotel in D.C. The couple stepped away from day-to-day operations of their companies last year to work as unpaid advisors to the president, but they didn't completely divest themselves of their businesses.
And with the First Family unwilling to divest, we are left questioning whether the policy is driven by their financial interests and not the interests of our country.
Democratic lawmakers want more information about those business dealings to ensure there aren't any ethical or legal violations related to deals with foreign governments. An attorney for Ivanka and Jared responded to those criticisms, saying since joining the administration, Mr. Kushner and Ms. Trump have complied with the rules and restrictions as set out by the Office of Government Ethics. Congressman Adam Schiff says if Democrats retake the majority this fall, that will be just one of many issues they plan to investigate.
One of the issues we have now is with the Republican majority in Congress unwilling to do any oversight of this, we simply don't know whether the foreign policy of the United States is up for sale.
Unwilling to wait till November, 200 Democrats in Congress are behind one of 3 lawsuits the White House is facing, alleging the president is violating the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution that bars federal officials from accepting gifts or rewards from foreign governments without congressional approval. The lawsuits claim the president's D.C. hotel is profiting from foreign officials staying there. Separately, Shannon, more than 60 Democratic lawmakers are demanding the Government Ethics Office investigate President Trump's ties to China, pointing to Beijing's investment in an Indonesian theme park featuring Trump-branded properties just a few days before the president struck a deal to save the Chinese telecom company ZTE. Shannon?
All right, Garrettini, thank you very much. Retiring GOP Senator Bob Corker is firing another salvo at the president and his followers.
It's not a good place for any party to end up with a cult-like situation as it relates to a president that happens to be purportedly of the same party.
Corker adding he believes top congressional leadership is fearful and wary of upsetting the president. Joining me now to discuss that and more, Ricochet editor Bethany Mandel. Thanks for being with us tonight, Bethany.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Okay, so he says basically they don't want to do anything to run afoul of the president. It's not good for them. Corker went on to say these people always have to run for re-election. It's about the next election. What do you make of his comments today?
I mean, I think he has a point. I mean, this is sort of political calculus 101. You have to be able to keep friends in the White House and make sure that you're able to pass things, and so they sort of have to keep on going, and it's frustrating because there are things that the White House are doing that there should be some pushback, and Marco Rubio today provided some of that pushback with North Korea. But at the end of the day, they are of the same party, and they feel like they need to play nice, and sometimes they shouldn't be playing nice.
Well, okay, so David Wasserman of the Cook Political Report says this. He says, if you're a Republican member of Congress who wants to speak out against Trump, you have a couple of choices: retire or lose your next primary, talking about Congressman Mark Sanford losing his Republican primary last night. We've seen pro-Trump candidates do very well.
Yeah, but Mark Sanford also had a lot of issues with running to Argentina with his mistress.
There's that. There's also that.
It wasn't just because he was anti-Trump. He was a really, really problematic candidate. I mean, I think probably the better example would be in Virginia with Corey Stewart. Mm-hmm. That was really disappointing to see Virginia make that decision, and it's, I think, going to be another Alabama situation where it was. I mean, Alabama was an easy seat that we lost to the Democrat, but I think we're going to see a Democrat take the Virginia Senate seat as well because of this.
Okay, so we have a lot of internal struggle within the GOP about whether or not to support the president. You wrote a very interesting piece where you talk about the fact that there are people on the outside of the GOP and more the progressive and the left who are absolutely flaming people left and right for any support of the president. You wrote this in part. Americans are told they should not, they cannot support this man under any circumstances. To do so is racist, the cardinal sin of our generation. Later on you say, instead of trying to understand Americans in their choice for president, anyone voicing even a modicum of support for the administration is bullied into apologies and silence. And you note some of the most recent examples. So basically, if you say something in support of the president, or if you're not openly defying him, you're a racist, a bigot, any number of things.
Yeah, and so Americans are now faced with a choice, basically: join the mob or be attacked by the mob. And that's not where the resistance should be going, but that's exactly what the resistance is doing. They've decided that any amount of support for the president, even when he does good things. I mean, there was a criminal justice reform package that has the support of Van Jones, and they've chosen to be silent about it. And for me, as sort of a moderate Republican, I was an ever-Trumper, now I call balls and strikes. It would be nice for them to say, this is good. You've done a good thing. Do more of that. And then when he does something that they don't like, they have some sort of standing to say, you know, I'm not anti-Trump, I'm not hysterical, but this is something that he's done badly. But they've just decided to ignore the bad stuff, to warp the news stories. I mean, the MS-13 example is probably one of the best. The fact that he called MS-13 animals, and so much of the mainstream media decided to just say that he was talking about. Yeah, totally misconstrue. And so they're really feeding into his 2020 reelection. Exactly. And the hysteria, I don't see him not being reelected at this point, because your choice is either join the mob or be attacked by it. Mm-hmm.
And you note that the more that people come after him, it sort of validates this concern that some people had that maybe there was, maybe he was right about the media being completely unfair and about conservatives and their viewpoints being just openly mocked. So we'll see. It was a very interesting piece. Bethany, great to have you with us.
You as well.
All right, is she leaving? A new report claims Sarah Huckabee Sanders is ready to leave her job at the White House. But what is she saying tonight? Is it a case of fake news? It is just the facts. That's all we bring you in the Real News Roundup, and that's next. Time now for your Real News Roundup. The former head of security for the Senate Intelligence Committee was in court today. James Wolfe is charged with lying to investigators about his contacts with reporters, including New York Times reporter Ali Watkins, with whom he reportedly had a romantic relationship. He pleaded not guilty. Wolfe's lawyer says he will file a motion to limit public officials, including the president, from commenting on the case to the media.
We're going to vigorously defend Mr. Wolfe against this unfair and unjustified prosecution. I want to emphasize that there's absolutely no allegation in this case that Mr. Wolfe leaked classified information.
Meanwhile, the New York Times says it is investigating the nature of Watkins' relationship with Wolf and what she disclosed about it to her former employer. Also tonight, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly reportedly revoking the West Wing access of Rudy Giuliani's son, Andrew, who serves as a junior White House staffer. Axios reporting Kelly revoked his so-called blue pass because of issues in the workplace he wasn't happy about. And add this to the debate over the media's coverage of President Trump's summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. The New York Times editorial board opining that one of the reasons the president seemed comfortable with Kim was because he could essentially lord over him. The Times writing Mr. Trump is way taller than Mr. Kim, and for this president, size does matter. And Press Secretary Sarah Sanders firing back tonight at CBS reports she's planning to leave the White House. Tweeting this, does at CBS News know something I don't about my plans and my future? Adding that she loves her job and she is honored to work for the president. All right, you're going to meet a pint-sized